Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Esquire Coaching Radio, where we help attorneys achieve unparalleled personal and professional success. And now here's your host, Ann Jenrette Thomas.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Esquire Coaching Radio Show. It's such a pleasure to be here with all of you today. As you know, Esquire Coaching is a national coaching and consulting firm that's dedicated to empowering lawyers to happily succeed in the business of law. To that end, we discuss the full range of topics, from building business to getting a job to work-life balance and, frankly, everything in between. Today we have a very special guest who's going to talk about an outrageous but an awesome topic: how to have fun at a large law firm. Yes, you heard me correct, how to have fun at a large law firm. So during law school, many of us had the dream of working at a large law firm. You know, we understood, it's going to be long hours, but there was that appeal of the large salary and the lunches in the city, the happy hours, and just the general camaraderie at the firm. But the reality for most of us was much different than the expectation. And the time spent mostly sitting behind a desk trying to meet billable hours really created an unhappy work environment for most associates. But there's another option, and rather than feeling trapped in a career that doesn't make you happy, there's a way to derive pleasure from your work, and that's what our guest, Robert Graff, is going to be talking about today. Robert is the president of the Graff Standard and one of its coaches. Prior to becoming a coach, he was an assistant DA for 5 years, an associate at an employment, business, and healthcare law firm for 2 years, and currently he has his own private practice in Pennsylvania. As a coach, he helps lawyers reignite the passion they once felt for the law, find enjoyment in even the most demanding and monotonous aspects of their job, and strike a sustainable work-life balance. Welcome, Robert.
Thank you. Thank you, Ann, for having me here. How are you?
Oh, I'm awesome, and I really cannot wait to dive into this. So, listeners, just so you know, I have chatted with Robert before. I really think he's an awesome guy, and I think you're going to enjoy this. And before we dive in, Robert, I want to remind our listeners, if you want to ask Robert a question at the end of our show, call 347-838-8719 and press 1 to get in line. 347-838-8719 and press 1 to get in the line. All right, Robert, Let's start a little bit about you. What do you enjoy most about what you do now?
Really, I enjoy helping people. I never realized that that's why I became a lawyer, but through a lot of my self-discovery process during my transition from the law firm life to my own practice, to my own coaching practice, I realized, wow, I really like helping people, and I have fun doing it.
I love that, and it's so honest. You know, I think the reality is that most lawyers enter the profession because they do want to help people. It's not, it's not just that greedy perception that I think a lot of people think about us. So How did you learn to enjoy the practice of law?
It was really a process for myself and a discovery process of why I do what I do, and being able to find the niche that I wanted to work in and take the clients that I wanted to take because they were coming to me. My law practice, I think, is the best example of how well my coaching practice has done. From the very point that I don't advertise my law practice, but I have a fairly successful one just because people see my energy, they feel my energy, they see my excitement about what I do through the practice of law, and they come to me. I know a big part is for many lawyers in large firms, they have to go build business too. They don't know how to sell. That's beyond just the billable hour part, is needing to go out and build a business. And by showing that energy and showing that you can actually have fun in what you're doing, people will come to you just out of casual conversation. They'll come, they'll say, hey, I don't know if I need a lawyer, but I like what you're selling. I like your attitude about it. And they'll come to you, they'll say, hey, you know what, I have a problem, my friend has a problem, I know somebody that needs an attorney, can you help me? Do you know somebody that can help me? And it just, the practice builds from there.
So you're really pointing to a lot of self-discovery and enthusiasm is what I'm hearing you say. Is that accurate?
That's exactly it. A lot of it is through my coaching practice when I work with other attorneys is the self-discovery process, why we went to law school. And not just I went to law school because my parents made me. It's I went to law school because I wanted to do this or I wanted to do that. And when you get down to that root again, because a lot of that disappears when we're studying for the bar, when we're taking exams, when we're competing against other classmates, that a lot of that reasoning disappears. So it's about rediscovering that reason of who we are, who the self is. That's when we find out the practice we want to have.
Okay, this is a great point you're making. But talk to me about how can lawyers, and you know from coaching and you know from practicing law, how most of our profession can be a little reticent when it comes to this kind of, self-discovery process. So how can a lawyer find that passion, that verve?
Well, a lot of it is wanting to. I don't think anybody wants to have a career where they feel like they're in prison. And a lot of people feel that way. They're sitting up in these big buildings. They feel like they're in a prison, in these offices with a lot of other people. Nobody wants that feeling. So it's about saying, I don't want it to be that way. I'm looking for a different way for it to be. I'm not a person that wants to quit law. I put a lot of time into this. I put a lot of energy into this. I actually like some of the practicing I do, and I'm learning a lot, and I'm having an intellectual enjoyment of doing it, but I don't want to be in pain anymore. I don't want to feel like I'm trapped. So it's about coming to that realization and saying, there can be a better way. There is a better way than how I'm living it. I can enjoy my family, I can enjoy my friends, and I can enjoy my work all at the same time. I can find a work-life balance if I choose to find one.
Wow. I think that's powerful, and I totally get what you're saying in terms of making that choice and having that realization. Now, could you share a little bit about your own journey then, just so people can see how you got to that point where you're like, this madness is not for me?
Sure. Really, for me, it was I was, as you stated, I was a prosecutor for 5 years. One day, I guess. Really, I realized recently it was a long day in court, and I was walking home, and some guy said to me, "You look miserable." And I thought,
wow.
Government employee, and this was a random stranger on the street. I was thinking, government employee, we go through ups and downs, and I said that a lot. Sometimes it's fun, sometimes it's not. And I was like, wow, I really look miserable? Do I really want to be that person that people think is miserable all the time? So it kind of started a thought in my mind, and I fortunately ran into this guy again about 4 years later, and I thanked him. But it started a process. Well, what do I want to do? I got a resume together, which I hadn't done since law school. I started applying for jobs and was fortunate to go to a firm and begin to work there. And I spent about 2.5 years there. And about 2 years in, I said to myself, wow, this really isn't working for me as well. It didn't have to do with the billable hours. I'm not really sure what it had to do with. But I said, this isn't what I see myself doing for the next 30 years of my life. But what am I going to do? And that's kind of where the self-discovery process came along, because I didn't know what I was going to do. A lot of us as attorneys feel that there isn't really any other option. We're either attorneys or we end up being homeless. So
wow.
It's about figuring out, what is the next step? What can we do? They say a law degree is good for anything. People should go get law degrees because they really can do whatever they want. Well, you can be a lawyer, but you can also do other stuff along the way. And reinventing yourself is what lawyers do when they go to court, when they write documents. They're reinventing something to fit what their needs are. We're very flexible as attorneys, more than we think.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, just to point out something that you touched upon, I always notice or point out to folks when I'm speaking to groups of lawyers that there's this emptiness or this gnawing that you'll feel, and it's just this consistent thing. That is what I think you were pointing to when you discovered, all right, something else. This is not quite it. It's got to be something else, which was great because it pointed you in the direction of that self-discovery. So,
and that's an interesting thing there. For all of us that sit around and feel that emptiness, it's a large office we're working in. Everyone else is feeling it, but nobody talks about it. As you said, people are reticent. Nobody's talking about it. Nobody's sitting around saying, boy, I don't like what I do. And their friends, you go to your friends, and they're like, well, you're a lawyer. This is the standard thing what lawyers are supposed to do. But it doesn't, as I said, it doesn't have to be that way. There are examples out there. I think you and I, are two examples of that you can have a happy practice. It is possible to have a happy practice.
Absolutely. So let's hone this in a little bit, because the title of this episode is really bold, and audacious. So how, what does an attorney at a large, the large law firms, an associate in particular, need to do to have fun while they're at work? Talk about that.
Again, along the self-discovery lines, it's about being yourself. If there's a coaching theory that like energy, or a theory out there that like energy attracts like energy. If you're all walking around in the doldrums out there, then you're going to attract those people that are miserable. Misery loves company. But if you have your energy high, if you're saying, boy, you go to work happy to be there on a Monday, happy to be there late on a Monday, happy to go in early on a Tuesday, people that have that same type of attitude will be drawn to you, and you can actually affect other people around you. So, nobody goes to lunch. Great example, nobody goes out to lunch with me. I don't know. There's nobody to have lunch with. Well, have you gone up to somebody and said, hey, let's go out to lunch? It's about creating the environment you wanted to create. It's about imagining the environment you want to create and then actually putting it to practice, or taking small steps to move forward to put it into practice. So by doing so, I'm really saying a lot of the times when we don't like what we do, it's your stuff. If somebody's not getting along with you at work, if you feel somebody's competitive with you at work, if somebody's putting pressure on you at work, we take that a lot on ourselves. By looking at it and just saying, all right, I have to get this done, and this is what I'm going to do, and this is why I like what I do, and really finding a way to change your narrative in your head from I have to build these numbers of hours to how can I each day appreciate what I'm doing. You can actually have fun doing it because you don't have that pressure. You don't have that weight on your shoulders.
That is really insightful. So simply asking the question, how can I have more fun each day at work, really opens up a whole new perspective.
Exactly. I've been thinking about this a lot recently, in the sense that it's about imagining what is your ideal work environment, taking that ideal work environment, looking at the attributes at that work environment that are already in existence at your work. So let's say, and I'm giving actually a real-life example here, one thing that you like about your work is that you have a fantasy football team, and other people at work also have a fantasy football team. Well, creating that league and then building on that league so that it's a sustainable thing and making it fun for everyone, and more people can join, or creating different leagues, or having a fantasy baseball league. If that's something that you enjoy, bring other people in. Make it something where it feels like home for you, like a second home, because you're spending a lot of time there. You might as well have fun doing it.
That's so true. You do spend a lot of time there, and I like what you're saying. Not only are you challenging our listeners to, bring that question in, how can I make my work environment more fun, but you're also challenging them to take initiative. I think that's fantastic.
And that's really the most important part there, is to take that initiative.
Yeah, definitely.
Go ahead.
Action is imperative.
Mm-hmm.
So what about smaller or mid-sized law firms? I mean, it's a little bit more challenging, I think, in those areas, just because there's more pressure to do business development as well as completing the work. So what support or what advice do you have with respect to having fun in those environments?
I would make sure, and mid-size, it's sometimes even less. It's less difficult at mid-size than at very small ones, where you might be wearing many hats at the same time. But it's about honoring yourself and taking that time for yourself when you do feel stressed, walking away, doing something that's good for you. I know for me, whenever I used to get stressed, I worked at a small firm, I would get up and go have a cup of coffee. because I enjoyed drinking coffee. It was my time, and I would take those 5 minutes, those 10 minutes right there that I felt I could spare to have that cup of coffee, and then I felt energized again to get back to writing, to get back to answering interrogatories, to writing interrogatories, something along those lines. Whatever I was doing, I felt more energized. The way I see it is we only have so much energy that we can give to everything around us, and it doesn't grow on trees. Like money, it doesn't grow on the trees. It's like a savings account. So if you use up all the money in that savings account, if you use up all the energy that you have, there's nothing left to give. So you need to bring it back in. You need to find a way to bring it back in for you so that you have that energy to move forward, to be able to support your clients, to be able to support your colleagues, to be able to support yourself. It's a circular process that you have to build that energy up, you have to release it when you're doing your work, and then you have to build it back up again. So it's important that you honor yourself and honor the time that you have for yourself so that there's enough energy to go around.
I love the bank account or savings account analogy. I think that makes it so concrete for people. You know, everybody gets that, right? If you want to spend, then you have to be able to have something in there that you can spend. So that's absolutely a fantastic analogy. And do you have suggestions on how people can, increase that energy, or is it a personal thing in your opinion?
It's a personal thing. It's about making time. I know for me it was coffee, and I'm not going to tell everybody go out and become addicts to caffeine. But it's really a personal thing. If I know for myself, I remember in law school they said that there was a study done. You could only really learn for 50-minute periods, and then you needed a 10-minute break for every 50 minutes you learned. So for me, that was when I would build in that time for myself, knowing that I had those 10 minutes right there to build in, because I was clearing my head out. I was clearing out the clutter. But it could be anything. It doesn't need to be in the middle of the day. It could be watching your favorite TV show at night. It could be reading a book on your way home when you're sitting on the train. Whatever it is, you make that time for yourself, then that's what's important for you. Everybody's different. I could say it's about honoring yourself and honoring your values, but what does that mean? Everybody has different values. So it's really about finding that personal reason and that personal way that you're taking care of yourself.
I totally agree. And I think a lot of people do not know what their values are. I mean, at least I find that in our coaching practice, that we actually have to walk people through exercises so they can start to understand it. Is that what you find in your practice as well?
Yeah, and that's, I'm smiling when you said that. It's an odd thing. We all think we know, these are the values that I have. I was very interested in this. Is kind of a little off tangent, but when people were doing the ice bucket challenge, people had values, and they were inserting their values into whether people did it or whether people didn't do it. But if you look at all the values, people were just doing it to help. A lot of the people's actions were, I want to help, so I'm going to dump a bucket of ice on my head and donate money to ALS. Some people were saying, why are we wasting all this water when there's people out there that don't have fresh water? The value there was help, but it was the other values that might have come into conflict with that value of help when they were responding of whether they were going to do it or not. And it was an interesting play to see how people were responding at that point. But it is a process. We all know what we think our values are, but do we really walk the talk? I might say, I'm an honest person, and then go lie to everybody. Well, how honest am I really? If honesty is a value to me and I expect people to be honest with me, but I'm not honest with them, then maybe it's not that important of a value. So it's about finding those values and how your values conflict. And when you have a value conflict or a value challenge, which one is superior to the other? Which one comes first?
That's brilliant. I think that's really important. Before I ask additional questions, I want to just remind our listeners, if you have questions for Robert, this is the time to call 347-838-8719 and press 1 to get in the line. That's 347-838-8719 and press 1 to get in the line. All right, Robert. So this has been really an enlightening discussion so far. what is the number one tip you can give to an attorney listening to this show right now?
Be yourself. And I don't mean be yourself in the law firm. Be yourself in every situation. So the question I would ask somebody is, how would your friends describe you? How would a stranger describe you? And how would your family describe you? In each situation, they should be the same. So be yourself with everyone, just as you'd want a close person to be with you. Just as you want a family member to be with you, to know you, how well they know you, how would you want a friend to know you, and how would you want a stranger that you met for the first time to know you? Being yourself will bring out your true values, will bring out your true, basically your true colors. I hate to quote a song, but it's about bringing out your true self, and then other people who are like you will be drawn to you, and you will be able to raise their energy, they'll be able to raise yours, and it'll be a process where you're able to have that camaraderie, you're able to build that closeness with people, you're able to build a relationship that's based on your individual values.
I agree with you. I think that this is a really important thing for folks to be themselves. And, one of the things that has come up a lot, we do a lot of diversity-related work. Mm-hmm. And the whole idea of authenticity and being authentic and really bringing more of, whether it's your cultural heritage or, your gender-specific items or your sexual orientation, just bringing more of who you are to the firm environment so that we could have two things, less of this dichotomy or bifurcation that happens, and what you're talking about earlier about energy. It takes a lot of energy to, for lack of a better phrase, fake the funk,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think you're really hitting on something important that has like this dual power, which is be yourself equals increasing your energy. That's brilliant.
It does. I mean, I've heard it since I was a kid. It takes more muscles to frown than it does to smile. You're going to attract more people to you when you're smiling than if you're frowning at them all the time. Just be yourself. Be happy. If you're a happy person, be a happy person. It's the best way to draw people in.
Absolutely. So talk to us a little bit about what made you become a coach who works specifically with lawyers.
Well, for me, it's what did I know? What do I know? And that's lawyers. I'm a lawyer myself. I've spent a lot of time with different lawyers with different personalities, and I all see us struggling. I saw it in myself. I see it in others around me. I saw it, I hate to say it, but I was at a firm downtown, and it was my last week, and I was actually shocked to be at such a large firm, and a support staff person said to me in the elevator, she said, what's that face for? And I said, I've never been at a firm with so many different levels. I've only worked at small firms and government. She said, well, welcome to the next 30 years of your life. And I thought, wow, that's how people view us. That's how people view attorneys, as just basically we're locked up in this multi-floored glass building in the middle of Philadelphia. And I thought, I'm not the only one. They say ask a question because other people are going to want to know the answer to that. Don't be afraid because everyone else probably has that same question. And my question was, why do I have to be so upset? Why do we as attorneys have to dislike what we do? Why do we have to feel that stress every day? Why do we need to feel like we're working in a factory? When we went to law school, nobody was like, boy, I can't wait to fill my jar of widgets so that at the end of the year it can be emptied again. It's about figuring out who we are, and then we can move forward from there. And that was really why I wanted to work with attorneys, because as I said, I like helping people. I understand attorneys, and I actually like being an attorney. So what a better combination than working only with attorneys?
It's true. And, when I introduced you, one of the things that you work on is really sustaining work-life balance. Mm-hmm. Yet when I've talked to, not all, but many lawyers, they really start to feel like this idea or notion of work-life balance is a farce. What do you have to say when people present you with that sort of, oh, it's not possible attitude with work-life balance?
I guess work-life balance in itself is a misnomer. It's our relationship with work and our relationship with where we want to spend our time. And it's a relationship with our values and how they come into conflict with each other. So when people say work-life balance, I said, well, that's great. We're just basically managing stuff. I could balance my work by saying I'm going to work 10 hours a day. I'm going to be at home 10 hours a day with my family, and I'm going to sleep 4 hours a day. That's a balance right there. That is completely balanced. But are you happy? So it's about finding what values you have and what reasons you do what you do. If you're at home and you're miserable because you'd rather be at work, then don't be at home. Your family would appreciate what you do more and the little bit of time, if it's quality time, than you sitting at home stressing the entire time. It's about finding a balance that works for everybody. It's about managing your different aspects of your life and seeing what is best for every part of it. So it's really about knowing yourself and knowing what's best for you and why you do it.
It all starts with knowing yourself. Going back to what you started with, which is the self-discovery.
Mm-hmm.
Now, earlier you talked about getting an idea or imagining what you want your life to be. Do you have any suggestions or tips to help our listeners do an exploratory exercise like that?
Yeah. Actually, the first step is to find a quiet space where there's no interruptions. Many people are different. I am a visual learner, so I like to write the stuff down when I'm doing it. But for others, they might be auditory. They can speak it out loud. It's finding a quiet spot and then really asking yourself, what do I want? What is my ideal? And writing it down. And then taking those steps and saying, well, what is my ideal? What is my reality? And seeing where those two intersect. And as I said before, taking those points and making plans to move forward from those points to make them stronger. And when you make the reality and the ideal closer to each other, then you're happier where you are.
Absolutely. And, I would just add one more thing. I think most of the time when people are thinking about the ideal, they actually start to self-edit, even while in their imagination. Oh, well, maybe this is not realistic or whatever. I say just go for it. Go for the gold. Just dream up what would be amazing for you. What would be an amazing life for you, right? And then try to make that happen. So
and
this is
what you're saying is correct because it's about a step-by-step process. It's not going to be tomorrow. You're not going to create the ideal and then move forward from there. It's about stepping each step one step at a time.
Right. Absolutely. Well, Robert, this has been an amazing, jam-packed, enlightening interview. How can someone who's interested in either your legal or your coaching services get in contact with you?
They can come to my website, graffstandard.com. There's contact us information on there, or they can email me directly at robert@graffstandard.com.
Excellent. And there's 2 F's in your name, right?
That is correct.
All right. So thank you so much for being here. It was just a real pleasure to have you here and join us today.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it as well.
So, listeners, let's keep this conversation going. Why don't you share what your big, bodacious, audacious goals are, what your ideal is. Share it on our Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn, and you can access all those sites right on www.esquirecoaching.com. Let's inspire one another. Next episode, next week, we'll be talking the trusted advisor and make an impression that lasts. And we'll have Deborah Ashraf available to talk to us then. Until then, be well, everyone.